Really excellent day in Southern California. Orange County. All right, so my high beam switch is not working. As you know, the Mazda Miata, as you pull the stalk, should flip up the lights and turn on the high beams, but it's not doing that, so our switch is dirty. There are occasional times, like in extreme wet or extreme dry environments, where it will go just briefly, but it won't ever stay on when you put it in the forward position. So it's more likely that I hit the turn signal. We're gonna clean the switch, and first we're gonna remove this plastic cover and spray some electronic cleaner in there to make sure that we can clean those contacts. If they're so far corroded that electronic cleaner is not gonna work, we'll have to pull the switch out, but fingers crossed on this. Once we get this cover off, a couple of screws on the bottom here, and a few little snaps on the side, we should see what we're working with a little bit better. That cover's off. This bottom piece here, where the key sits, it's got 4 screws, so don't get impatient if you find out that that long, deep passage has a screw in it. Okay, great time to clean these. Not so bad on the top. This little cover is removable, which is really nice that Mazda thought of that. For whatever reason, you might need to get to the top. All right, now looking here on the side, this brown and gray cover, if you want to remove the whole switch, you have to pull the steering wheel and I believe the clock spring out to get to the switch, because the right side wiper switch is all one unit with the left side. So like I said, if we can't clean it, we'll do that next, but we're just gonna spray the schnot out of it right now. Also, you can see the contacts here for your ignition switch, so it might not be a bad idea to clean that up too. This is supposed to be safe on plastics as well, and it looks like one of those older cans that just sort of floats around the garage until it's time to use it. Yeah, you guessed it, there's no amount of spring that's actually going to get that steering wheel to clean up without removing the switch. So we gotta remove it. And a couple of connectors underneath. 1 screw here, 1 screw here, 1 and 1. There's also 3 screws on the clock spring. Removing those, I wasn't able to get the clock spring out. It's all gonna come out as one big assembly. So this is the connector for the airbag and horn, which means we have to disconnect it at the bottom of the pigtail down here. Removing this cover on the bottom, 2 screws on bottom, 2 snaps right here, easy peasy. And then you got the big white guy, and lots of little pins in there. These 2 as well. Orange one is second, the blue one's first, I believe. And then that's it. That's all you gotta do. And now it's time to remove our stock. Okay. First look on the back. Oops, the screws are falling out. That gray bit on the right side there is what we're gonna take apart. 3 screws. You see how the one on the left you really cannot access without removing this. Otherwise, it looks like you can almost get to these 2 here, but you really just got to pull the whole thing off. Nice opportunity to check your steering column, and if it looks really bad, replace whatever you might need to while you're here. And if you're working on your ignition lock, voila, you've got access to it. Gonna put this on the bench, remove the screws, and see what it looks like on the inside of the switch. There's actually a 4th screw from these guys hiding right here below this wire. Once you pop out the 4th screw, you've got 2 little plastic snaps, 3 of them actually. Yeah, just look around the whole perimeter. Get your snaps pulled out. The bright switch is just a push stock, and you'll see that right here. We're gonna find out exactly where it's dirty, but then you will pop off in here. There's 1 little snap, 2, 3, 4, and 5. When that cover comes off, you don't really need to worry about losing much because there's only 1 piece inside that will fall out, and that's the little slider here. It's gonna deactivate the turn signals, I believe. Now from there, looking inside, you can see got a bunch of old grease, dirty contacts on the right side, but that's not our issue. Our issue is the high beams aren't turning on. So we're gonna poke around there and see if we can clearly define what went wrong before we start, quote, fixing things. Last thing I want is to cause damage to something that doesn't need to be fixed. So the goal here is to get sandpaper in between each of these contacts, and as you press on the bright switch here, you'll see exactly kind of how things move around. You see it's wiggling inside here now. It's moving this contact and closing there, and as it continues to press, it separates this contact here, so that's a second spot to clean. And then all the way forward, it should, yep, it's kind of hard with 2 fingers, but it should press on that bottom one right there. So that's 3, oh, and 4 if you count the top one, 4 spots where it's all got to make contact for the flashing of the brights. And then what I think is going on when the brights are, when the stalk is pulled toward you, it's the flashing motion. So this plunger in here pushes in here. When it's pushed away from you toward the gauge cluster, what I believe is happening is this switch, which is probably in a position where either here, you know, with constant pressure, it probably turns off. It may separate the contact, if that makes sense. Like, I think this is where it's at rest, making contact, and when you pull the bright switch, it removes the pressure, because that plunger just goes, whoop. This plunger, it's gone as you push away, because it pivots right here in the middle. If you're completely lost, don't even sweat it. Just go ahead and remove all their stuff and start cleaning things. You'll be all right. So that's, yeah, I'm gonna clean everywhere. I'm gonna clean here and even in there, because it's making contact. It's probably acting as a ground on this stalk itself. So that's an important thing to take note of. Afterward, grease it. Get some silicone non-conductive grease, also known as everything AutoZone sells you for, like light bulb grease, things like that, so it won't short out the contacts, and it'll also protect them from moisture. That's the big killer on some of these, is just moisture, or even high current. Buy aftermarket bulbs or higher wattage bulbs. It might burn these contacts just a little bit. So I'm sticking the sandpaper in here, closing the contacts, and as these contacts are closed, using my finger back there, I pull the sandpaper out. If it's thick enough, you can kind of shimmy it a little bit, and do that a couple times. We're gonna do that on all of our contacts, put it in the car, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't, well, I don't really feel like doing all this again, so we're gonna be pretty thorough now. Although it's hard to see these contacts, they look great. Let's see if we can do a before and after. I'll do a before and after on this guy right here. It won't focus. Okay, I'll do my before and after on this bottom contact. It ain't exactly beautiful, but it ain't exactly filthy. So we're gonna shine that up and we'll check it right now. You see in those little grooves there, it's picked up some of the dirt from the sandpaper, and our sandpaper has gotten a little coppery, a little dirty itself. Now we're gonna spray that with a cleaner, an electronic contact cleaner. It's also requiring that we, you know, look at the top one and then look at the one that we just did. It's gonna take some texture out of it. You gotta be enough to get the dirt off, but not too much to where you're flattening those out. Capiche? Got a towel underneath to catch all my mess, but if you can keep up with what's going on, it's really quite simple. You can remove the 3 screws from this guy and loosen up the wires underneath. They're gonna tuck in one of these passages, whichever. And pop that out. I taped it so that I keep my relative position. I don't have to go and reset the clock spring later, which just means it's not gonna be rotated a full 180 or 360, so I don't, you know, break it by overturning it. And it needs to be able to spin freely in either direction. So inside of here, very interesting design, 2 screws, there they are. You take this little guy out, and there's a ball. Okay, that ball sits in the channel here at the very bottom of this groove. The way to reinstall that is tilt this lever. Oh, it's such a mess right now. And then the ball will go in there, and you can set this in here, push everything down, and tighten those screws. That gives you the clicking, locking motion as you pull it into the brights, permanently staying on versus the flashers. Okay, now with that out, push this down, and that comes out. I'm gonna clean the schnot out of this. Yep, and then put everything back together. There's no bare metal on this piece, so I don't think the ball actually, I don't know if it grounds on it or not. Maybe a little bit of wear on the bottom, but I don't know if it's supposed to be bare metal. Either way, I'm just gonna clean it up and toss it back in. 100% silicone grease, also known as dielectric grease. Keeps out moisture, does not fudge up the contacts. Look how nice and shiny they are now. Get a Q-tip in there and clean out that old stuff. And don't forget to grease up this little guy here. He sits in there and he slides around. Now I would be tempted to use grease on this, and I'm gonna use the silicone, not the white lithium, because white lithium gets a little pasty. Looks like they use some sort of white grease in here for the general motion of things. So we can do that, but I'm not gonna do it in here. Although, yeah. All right, fam, if you're like me, and I am, you wanna do the other side too, even if it's perfect, because you don't wanna just go through cleaning one half, later in life have this side go out on you. Even if it never goes out on you, this is that peace of mind that feels so good right now. There's a plastic cover on the back. Removing that screw allows you to pop off the cover. There's 1, 2, and 3 tabs on it. When that's off, you'll have to remove also the 2 screws on the other side of the switch. And this is a weird little jiggle game that you play, because the whole thing doesn't move terribly, just a little bit like that, but that gives you enough to untuck right on this point, right here between those 2 solder points. Okay, now pop that out over. You'll see you've got a nice easy strip of something to clean. All the electronics in the way that we're gonna protect, and more spots for grease in there, as well as the white grease in here and on the front side of that switch. So that keeps it pivoting smoothly, and then the silicone grease in there will keep those contacts operating perfectly. All right, my babies, we're ready to put her back in. Everything's nice. If there's extra grease, clean her up. Don't send her back in ugly. Boy, I didn't realize how much of this pivots. Yeah, I see a few spots I missed. Let's go back and do those right now. Reconnected. Moment of truth. After disconnecting an airbag, I always stand to the side just in case it decides to go. All right, we got wipers. Here we go. Pull the stalk, these should pop up. Yeah, there's my good girl. Let's turn these headlights on. Getting your stoke on. I feel like I'm setting up a video for one of those exhaust sound runs. What do you think? Is she good? Oh, baby.